Okay, so about a week or so ago, I finished playing this Xenosaga Episode 1 Der Will zur Macht, which I believe translates into Will to Power, which I believe is a Nietzsche quote. I think the second one is, excuse me, I believe the translation for the second game's title is Beyond Good and Evil. I don't remember what the third one was because it wasn't a phrase I was familiar with, but I believe all of them are named after Nietzsche quotes. So, my personal history with this game is a good few years ago. I'm going to say like 2012, 2013, somewhere around there. A buddy of mine bought this for me. And he's like, yeah, like I know you really love turn-based JRPGs. This is one I found. I found it pretty cheap. I've seen this scene where there's a crazy immortal dude who like rips his own head off. This game seems nuts. The character seems nuts. You might really like it. I was like, cool. I'll get around to it at some point. And the thing is, I didn't have a working PS2 at the time, so I wasn't able to. So a good few years later, I was in law school, I think, at this time. I'd either just graduated or I was home for the summer. I think I had just graduated, so this was probably around 2018. I borrowed a friend's PS3 because he had one of the backwards compatible PS3s. I was like, cool, I'm finally going to play this fucking game. And I played it for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. And I ended my session and I didn't pick it back up again. And his PS3 was just in the corner of my room collecting dust. I never booted it up, and so I gave it back to him like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, I haven't played it. I haven't been playing it. I need to give you your shit back. My P. So the game still wasn't played. Then, at the start of this year, I had made a decision. I was like, okay, let's go through, like, I want to focus this year primarily on clearing my backlog. Yes, there's going to be some games coming out that I'll probably really want to play, but for the most part, I just want to focus on games that I've had my eye on for quite some time. That's why I finally got done with Eternia. Abyss. Wanted to replay Symphonia. I'd been interested in Scarlet Nexus for quite a while, and then I bought it a couple years ago. Hadn't booted it up yet. Maybe it wasn't a couple, maybe it was just last year, but it had been on my radar for a while. Xenosaga, very clearly, had been on my radar for a while. And I knew that Xenoblade 3 was... No, sorry, last year was Xenoblade 3. And so I was interested in booting up Xenosaga. I was like, maybe I should play all the Xeno games. Let me play the Blade games. And I just could not make it through X. I did not care at all for Xenoblade X. So I was like, whatever, I'll just watch Clay play it. But since it had been on my radar, I was like, this is going to be on my list. And I know a friend of mine, coincidentally, the same friend I borrowed the PS3 from, had Xenosaga Episode 2 and he had Xenosaga Episode 3. So I was like, cool. I can borrow it from him when I get to it. It's on the list. It's not like an immediate priority, but when I get to them, I can get to them. Then, later in the year, probably around April or so, I don't remember exactly when, but somewhere around there, that friend kind of hit everybody up. He's like, I want to sell my game collection. I don't really play a lot of games anymore, and I'm running out of space because I like to collect movies. So, like, I'm going to be selling everything. But, if you guys want something, let me know. Like, we can work something out. I can get you a friend discount. And I was like, dang it. That's who I was going to borrow Xenosaga from. I now have to go, like, I can't just borrow it now because I don't know how long he's going to have it. I need to go ahead and snag it for myself. So when my tax returns came in, which I remember it's like a month or so ago, I was talking about how my state tax returns and the issues with them, which I still haven't really heard back. That's its own shit, but these are my federal returns. There was no issue there. Thank goodness, thank God. But when those came in, I was like, okay, I'm going to get, with part of this, gonna go ahead and get Xenosaga, so there's no issues. So when I play it, I can play through the whole trilogy. And now that I've put a pretty significant investment into the series, it goes from being I'll play it when I can, I'm looking forward to it, to like, a bit of a priority. I still had my own kind of short list at the time. Like, I remember, like, after playing Lunar 1 and Clay getting Lunar 2, I was like, okay, I really, really want to play this now. Playing Abyss, Scarlet Nexus, there might have been another game, and The Witcher 3. It was like, these are games I've been meaning to play for a while, plus Lunar, which I just loved the first one so much I want to play this. But Xenosaga's next is on deck. So after all these years, all these setbacks, some of them just me personally never booting up the PS3 again, I finally finished the game. So, okay, sorry, I was seeing if I had any other things to say before the presentation. Nope. So we'll get into that. The first thing to say about the presentation is the art style. It's this combination of these very anime designs with like the facial structures, like mostly like how big the eyes are, but also trying to make the models look a bit more realistic. And it doesn't quite work. I feel like, excuse me. It's like, I look at something like Kingdom Hearts, and yeah, like old school like PS1 Kingdom Hearts models haven't aged the best, but it feels like this is like a really cartoony style, and they still try to make it feel cartoony, so I think it ages a little better, because it's fucking Disney. Of course it would age well, like make it look like a cartoon. But with Xenosaga, not quite. Like, look at these faces here on the back. Like, they look, like I said, it's like this weird combination of, like, let's make a realistic person, but give them, like, anime-like proportions. And it's off-putting. And with some characters, like Cosmos, who is actually a robot, like, the fact that Cosmos looks very doll-like works really fucking well. The fact that Shion looks really doll-like, I don't think that's intentional. And then with someone like Chaos, since I'm not exactly sure what his deal is, I don't know if it's something that works and is intentional or if it's unintentional. I will say I got used to the art style. By the end of the game, I was vibing with it, but I don't like that I had to get used to it. And again, it's not like it's something like Mob Psycho or Devilman Crybaby, where it's like, this is a really unique look, so maybe it meshes with you, maybe it needs to grow on you. This didn't age well, and I got used to how it looks, but it's kind of ugly, as much as I hate to say it. The voice acting, I actually think, is consistently good across the board. Like, yeah, maybe every now and then there's a line that's a little weirdly delivered. For the most part, I really like it. Have to give a shout out to Crispin Freeman, who voices Guinan. I think is his name, Guinan. Who, it's just Crispin Freeman's voice, which, like, I love his voice. His voice is fucking awesome. Then when he's voicing Albedo, it is not the Crispin Freeman voice. Like, he's doing a voice, and he is hamming it up. This dude is clearly having the time of his life every time he gets to talk as this dude. And it is wonderful. It is fucking glorious. There are definite moments where I noticed the lip syncing was off, and the tiny bit I've played of Xenoblade 2, which was like, I watched the opening cutscene and then I immediately saved, which is kind of what happened the first time I played Xenoblade 1. But the little bit, the lip syncing was really off in 2. Like, that's not a good sign. Like, it's, because I remember when I played Xenoblade 2, maybe I was saying that, I meant to say Xenosaga 2, the little bit I played, but like, I've played Xenoblade 2, the lip syncing is off like almost the entire game. It's not as distracting in 1, but every now and then it was something I noticed, and I feel like I should bring it up. Excuse me, fuck. Sorry, I just had lunch a little bit ago. When it comes to the music, I'm very torn. Because on the one hand, I think the battle theme is really good. Like, there's a nice amount of just, like, it's a pleasant song. There's a nice amount of, like, hype and build-up in the song. But it's basically the only battle theme. And it's like, okay, the fact is, like, this is for encounters. There's no, like, special music for special encounters. Like, I had something I maybe would prefer. You know, kind of like in Xenoblade, you've got, like, this is the normal battle theme, then here's the battle theme for this area in the game, like, here's when you're fighting, like, special monsters, and then here's the boss theme, like, that kind of shit. A game doesn't have to have that. It's appreciated, but it doesn't have to. But there is no boss theme. Even like when you're fighting stronger enemies, it's like, yeah, this is kind of like a mini boss. Yeah, it's just the normal battle theme. So even when I was fighting bosses, I'm like, is this a boss? Especially in the early parts of the game where I'm like, this feels like a boss, but the music is the same, so like, huh? This is weird. Like, it's a good song, but the lack of variety is odd. Only the final boss has a different song, and it's a really good final boss theme. Like, it's not one that's like super hype, but I think it's really fucking pretty. But I do wish there was a regular boss theme. And then the overworld and dungeons. Some of them have music, like the final dungeon does, the Song of Nephilim does. But like the Elsa, the Kukai Foundation, the Durandal, like I remember there is music playing when you're doing like the rescue part of the Kukai Foundation, which I thought was okay. But like when you're just in those areas normally, there's like no music. I don't remember what it's called, like the kind of dock town where you can give the little girl the seeds. There's like no music. There's a part of me that is like, okay, like let me say it like this. The cathedral ship, which is a dungeon where you're like inside a gnosis, also doesn't have music. In that one, I think it works. The fact that it's with this kind of these like, you just like hear the wind and it's like these ambient sounds and you really hear almost nothing but your own footsteps really works there because of just, again, like in terms of the story, how weird this dungeon is, how out of place everything feels. It makes sense for this to be some uncomfortable ambience. The other areas, it just feels like there should be music and there's not. Is this an intentional choice? Because like we're really trying to emphasize the areas because like you're in space and there shouldn't be music in space. Like I don't know, but it feels lazy. Like we didn't need music here, so we didn't put any. And like I noticed the lack of music. But on the other hand, at the same time, there's a lot of music in cutscenes. And the cutscene music is what you would expect from a Xeno game. And it is still a different composer from Xenoblade. But it's fucking pretty. It's really good. I remember in one cutscene, it's just playing Greensleeves. I'm like, this is a beautiful song. And I love it. And I feel like it's actually really working for the scene. Why didn't you do this in some of the dungeons? Why didn't you do this in like some of the overworld areas? Like it makes those areas feel so empty when they're not. I don't think they're supposed to. Again, Cathedral Ship I think is a really good exception to that. But these others, I'm like, man, like where's the soul here? And then you get to the cutscene, it's like, oh, there's the soul. I got it. And it's weird. It's kind of off-putting. And I don't feel like, if it isn't intentional off-putting, I don't think it works. Was there anything else I had to say about the presentation? I don't think so. I think that's about it. So overall, for presentation, I feel like it's a solid 3 out of 5. The areas where it does well, it does pretty damn well. But in other areas, it really feels off-putting or lacking. And for the most part, I don't think it works. I don't think it really serves the whole. So moving on to the gameplay. So there's no real traversal in this game, like traversing the overworld. It's just like you might walk around an area for a bit, but that's kind of it. So it's nothing like with Abyss, where I'm like, I can really talk about the traversal in the game, and honestly in that one, how I hate it. Here's something to really talk about, and for the most part, dungeons are kind of the same. They're fine. The only one off the top of my head that really stands out is the Song of Nephilim, and that's just because it really dragged on, and there's this weird elevator puzzle at the start of the level which annoyed the hell out of me. Like I wasn't like, man, this is really cool, this is really clever. Like this is dumb. I'm sorry, I don't want to do this. This feels like it's wasting my time. The first one with Junior, I don't remember what it was called, but like when you go onto the ship and you have to like do the key cards and shit, I actually like that quite a bit. Like now I'm remembering it, like that one's pretty okay. saving all the people in the Kukai Foundation, I actually thought was pretty fun. I had kind of a long session, so I was starting to get a little annoyed. It's like, I just kind of want to be done with this. But that was just because the session was long. I actually thought it was a pretty cool segment. Talking about combat, because it is a turn-based JRPG. Combat is... See, I say that it's like combat's an important part of the game. Like, well, it's also Xenosaga. It's a game where it feels like you're watching the game about as much as you're playing it. Maybe even more so, especially at the start of it. Like, there were quite a few times I would play, and I'd be like, yeah, so, like, I was playing Xenosaga, and Clay's like, wait, you were actually playing it this time and not just watching it? I was like, yeah, but I'm surprised, too. But talking about combat, I really, really love the base battle system of this game. So, the way it generally works is you have 3 party members, like you have a total party of 6, but you can only use 3 at a time, and there is no swapping, which that's something I don't love. I will, like a few things this game does that I don't care for. Number 1, you can't swap your party members in combat, something I always prefer. It is a save point game, which is also something I don't prefer. But it's also a game where your reserves do get experience, which is something I really fucking appreciate. And it's also not a game with random encounters. You can see the enemies on the overworld. I really like how... So it's one of those games with a walk button. Like, I think it's like if you hold R2, your character goes from ba to... And it actually has a purpose. Because generally, if you're holding the walk button, a lot of times enemies just won't notice you. And like, if you don't want to fight shit, you really don't have to. You're not as fast, but you're not as inconvenienced. And I really like that. Also, maybe this is more of a presentation thing, but I'll say it in gameplay. I believe I've talked on this channel a few times, especially with Fatal Frame 2, about stutter stepping. Or as I call it, because of Fatal Frame 2, the Minakami Shuffle, which is when your character is like walking, or it's like you're running. Let me try that again. In a game where there is a walk button, if your character is running and you just mash the walk button, your character will like kind of stutter as they're going. I love it. Like, anytime I play a game and like my character is just like, their default thing is just running, I'm like, is there a walk button? Please. Like, I was playing Strikers Persona 5 Strikers, and I was like, please, is there a walk button? Is there a walk button? Is there a Minakami Shuffle in this game? And there isn't. I was like, fuck, that sucks. Xenosaga has an amazing Minakami Shuffle. There's like 5. Depending on where exactly you push the button, you can get this like penguin stutter step. You get this like really good one. There's this other one, like another pose. Every character has one. When you see objects in the overworld, you can like pull out a Glock and just blow them up. And then you can like Minakami Shuffle while they're holding it. So I did it a few times, like, how does that work? So you pull out the gun, you shoot it, you start moving forward, and then the gun disappears, but they're still holding their hand out, but it's like the invisible guns from Team 4-Star. Not Team 4-Star, excuse me, Little Karibo, different Abridged series. And you're just holding an invisible gun while just like stuttering forward. It's wonderful. It is amazing. But back to combat. So... you've got 3 people. You can do like back row, front row, and then your enemies, who also can have like front rows and back rows. Every turn, there will be a turn bonus, where it's like on this turn, a special effect will happen. The 4 happen like at the start of combat, it'll be one of these randomly, and then they go in a very specific order. Turn number 1 is there is nothing. This is just a whatever turn. Next, it goes into high chance for critical. 3 is every time you attack, your boost gauge every attack you do will give more points to your boost gauge. Is every time you attack an enemy, your boost gauge will go up a little bit. It starts at 0 and at a maximum of 3. When you have a boost, you can say, I'm not on the turn order. I want to be on the turn order. I think also if you're on the turn order, you can just make your turn come a little faster. But it doesn't give you an extra turn, it just moves your turn up. And on boost turns, you'll just get like your boost meter will fill easier. And turn 4 is if you kill an enemy on this turn, your after battle points, like your experience, and then the points you can use to level up some of your other shit, you get more of that as well. I love how strategic it makes gameplay. But I was like, okay. Oh, also, because on top of that, there's also an AP system where your characters can do multiple attacks, but they can't do like their stronger attacks unless they have enough AP for it. So you can use one of your attacks instead of both to kind of keep AP, or you can guard, which doesn't take AP, and on the next turn, because they kept a lot of it, they'll have more on that turn, so they can do crazier shit. Also, your special moves, like your tech attacks, you can upgrade them. So essentially, you can get them out faster, you can do more damage, that the wait time after using them isn't as big, so your turn can come up faster, etc., etc. So, what I love is how this is a game that is all about maximizing your turns and not just like, okay, it's my character's turn. What shit do I want them to do? It's like, okay, it's this character's turn. Should I attack? Should I guard? Like, for example, there'll be times where I'm like, okay, it's Cosmos' turn. Cosmos does not have enough AP to use like her really strong attack. And she is on a no bonus turn. So, if I don't attack, if I just guard, I'm saving her up for later. And I don't feel like I'm really wasting the turn, because I'm not wasting a bonus right now, so I can have her guard. But if I'm on a boost turn, and it's like, okay, Cosmos is like halfway through her meter, like she almost has a full thing. Oh, sorry, I got a quick text from somebody. Like, let's say Cosmos's boost gauge is like halfway full, and she's on a boost turn, so if she attacks, she'll get really high. But she doesn't have enough AP to like really unload. I could have her do one attack, which could make her boost gauge go up more. It might even give her a full boost, but then she's not going to do her crazy shot on her next, and then she can save up for her next turn. Or I can have her attack twice, so on the next turn, she's not going to do her like stronger attack, but it makes the boost gauge go that much higher. Dude, so I know for sure I can just pop her and get her in whenever I need to. If I just need some extra damage, if I need her to like bust out a healing item real quick, that kind of shit. And when it, like, I love that. I love how really tactical the combat like feels once you understand the system and how to take advantage of each individual turn. It is money. However, the issues. Number one is the bosses. Because bosses, generally speaking, will be like, okay, here is our gimmick. This is what you have to deal with. For example, I believe it's the Kukai Foundation. You fight, you start fighting a monster. I think it's called like the Gigas or the Gygas, and then it splits into two. So now you're fighting two bosses at once. Both of them have strong AoEs. I think they each have like different like things that they're weak to and things they can do to you. And like, okay, that's your gimmick. That's not too bad. And it's super manageable. Then they start casting instant death. And it just kills you. It's not even like, oh, but it has like a high chance to miss or something. No, you're just fucked. Why? Like, there's a difference between, it's like, okay, like now it's starting to get a little tougher. It's getting a little stronger. Like, no, it just said fuck you. Why? There's one boss where you have to have Shion and Junior in your party. If the boss goes after Shion, it does a very strong AoE attack. You're like, okay, I need to make sure with like my boost mechanic, it never goes after Shion. If it goes after Junior, it can use a strong single hit attack, which is not nearly as bad, but still not ideal. So you're like, okay, I'd rather it not go after Junior, but it's better than it going after Shion. I can manage this. Here's the problem. Sometimes when you attack it, not every time, because then it wouldn't be fair at all, but it's sometimes, so it's kind of random. When you attack it, it will counter boost. So a regular boost that the player can do and enemies can do is essentially like I filled up my meter, I'm going to take a turn, I'm going to take my turn a little early. Okay. If I can do it, then enemies can do it, that's only fair. A counter boost, which only enemies can do. Which also, if you do a boost and then an enemy counter boost, it will go before you. It doesn't cancel your boost, but it's just like, I'm taking this turn, I need it. Like, I have priority because I just got hit. If an enemy counter boosts, it is not taking its turn early, it's taking an additional turn right then, and then its turn comes around. And that is a big difference, and that can be fucking deadly. For example, let's say that I'm in a situation while fighting that boss where I'm like, I want Xion to attack it. She doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but no one really needs healing right now. She's got max AP. I want to get some damage on this thing because I don't want to just waste the turn. So I do, and then it says, cool, I'm going to counter boost. And then it takes a turn right then and does its shitty AoE. Then let's say I don't have any boosts saved up, and its next turn was coincidentally right after Xion. It gets to go again, twice in a row. And because this boss is stupid and bullshit with the way it's designed, it's like, hey, Xion just went, and I went right after. Since Xion just went, I get to do this move. Then if the boss goes again, it's like, wait a second, Xion just went? Oh, I get to do my thing again. Like, what are you talking about? Xion didn't just go, you just went, don't care? I'm still after Xion. Okay, that's bullshit. That's a bullshit fucking mechanic. I don't like that. Like, it's a genuinely fair gimmick. And then the counter boosts, I think to me, it's the fact that it can counter boost and still go again. I don't like that. I also don't like how it's like, if it's like you did a certain amount of damage in one turn, it's going to counter boost. Like, again, that would also just be shitty. Because it's like, I'm fighting with my hands tied behind my back, on top of the fact that I have to make sure I burn boosts at specific times, so I can only get that by attacking, but I can't attack you because it fucks me over. Like, do you see the problem? It's shitty. I remember there's another boss where it's far away, so some of your attacks just don't work because you can't hit it. It'll spend turns like knocking people into the back row, so they have to use a turn to get back up so they can hit it at all. I think it's like the first boss you fight in the Song of Nephilim. Like, I just remember the way it was designed was, this boss is not hard. It doesn't have any AoEs. It doesn't do a lot of damage. It is incredibly manageable. But it is there to annoy you. It is just here to waste your time. It is not testing your skill. It is testing your patience. And I hated it so much. Another thing about combat that kind of sucks is the mechs. Because there's mech combat in this game, and they made it dog shit. Your AWGS, which I don't remember what that stands for, but the eggs, I think is how they pronounce it. I'm just going to call them the mechs. So the way the mechs work is it takes a turn to get into one, and it takes a turn to get out of one. So that right there, that's not great. It's not like it costs this much AP and then you can still do shit. It's like, no, your whole turn is gone. Okay, not optimal. A mech cannot use an item, like to heal another party member. Okay, so if you have someone who is okay, that's not optimal. You also cannot use an item to heal a mech. Like, there are literal items that will actually do that. They're called a frame repair. It's like to heal the mech. Only outside of combat. Okay. Also kind of shitty. Same with status ailments. So, for example, because this happened to me, if you get, like, there's, if someone has cast stop on a mech, and you don't have the thing that prevents the engine from being stopped, that character just can't do anything. Maybe after a certain amount of turns it'll go away. But it must be a long ass fucking number of turns, because that happened to me in one game. We had several turns after my character didn't do anything. They're literally worthless because they can't be healed. That fucking sucks. If a mech dies, and remember, you can't heal it with items, that character is just dead for the rest of combat. It's not like the mech is gone, so now they're just on foot and they can't use it. Nope. They can't do anything. They can't be revived. Get fucked. Remember that boost mechanic I was talking about? How it's really important? Guess what can't use boosts? Mechs. Now they can with a specific item equipped, but it takes one of your item slots for a mech. And also, it's a part of combat that they just can't do. And even if you have that item, your boost gauge as a mech does not go up. It's just, hey, when they were on foot, what boost did they have? They had 2? Cool. So this mech, because of that item, now has 2 boosts. And that's it. It ain't going up any further unless you get on foot, which costs a fucking turn. Their weapons, because like you can have like ranged weapons like guns and missiles and shit, those have ammo, and if they run out of ammo, that mech ain't doing shit. Oh, now you can't attack? Guess you gotta get on foot, which costs another turn. It's not good. The trade-off is they have a lot more health, which you can't heal, so it doesn't really, like in practice, it's not really that much of a buffer. Are they doing more damage? Sometimes, but not really. I remember it was like pretty near the end of the game. I was doing a boss fight. I don't remember which one it was. I want to say it was the Simian fight, which I believe was that the fight in the song? I think that's the fight in the song, F1? Where Clay saw me get into the mechs, he's like, what? When the fuck did you get mechs? Like, no, dude, I've had them literally the entire game. You've had them the entire game? Like, how have I never seen you use them? Because I don't. They suck. And it's really disappointing. Also, upgrades, people, upgrades. So, like I was saying earlier, like you could upgrade your tech attacks. You can make them, essentially you can get to them faster. The delay after using them is decreased, or you can increase their strength. It costs a lot of points to upgrade your tech attacks. And you have quite a few of them, and it feels like, cool, like this is a really cool one. I powered it up. Now it's going to be a long fucking time before I can afford to upgrade the next one. I don't like how expensive they are, or at the very least, I don't like how slow it is to get points. And I was saying earlier that your reserves get XP. They don't seem to get these additional points. So if someone's not in the party, their level will go up, but you're not going to be able to upgrade them. So it's on the one hand, it's like there's nice flexibility with the party, but also just, no, not really. You have ether points, which you can use in your skill tree to essentially buy, or it's like get more spells for people. You can also use those points to transfer a spell to another character. Like, it's not like I'm giving this to you and losing it. It's more just like, and then Control C, copy. Like I'm copy pasting, not cut and pasting. And I do like that. The problem with the skill tree is you can't just look at it. Because I would love to be able to do that. I was like, okay, like what is, like if I have this skill, this is going to be the next one. What happens if I keep going down this path of the tree? You can't do that. It's just, these are the next 2 branches, like immediately. Do you want them or not? They also don't really tell you what they do. I'm trying to think of an example, because I remember doing it with Ziggy, because I know he has a skill called Bodyguard. And I can't, because that was it. Because like I saw it was called Bodyguard. What I thought it did was like, oh, okay, if you use this skill, or maybe it's like a passive skill where he can take damage for someone. Maybe it only specifically works with Momo, but it's kind of like a, hey, someone's about to get hit. Oh, let me take the damage. Like I know Zidane has something like that in Final Fantasy IX. I think a few people have it, because, that's the way 9 works. But no, all it does is like, oh, if Momo's in the party, you can use this and you just get a power boost. Which is still nice. I mean, I don't use Ziggy, so it's whatever. But okay, like that's not bad. The problem is, it only tells me this is the name of the skill without telling me what it does until after I've paid the points to upgrade it, which, like I've said, A, you don't get if you're not in the party, and two, even if you're in the party, it feels like it's really fucking slow. And I don't like that. I like character progression. I like seeing my characters get stronger. And when you give me a thing, it's like you can progress your character and kind of customize them maybe even a little bit. But it's going to be agonizingly slow. Like, this isn't. It's worth it, but it feels more irritating than satisfying throughout most of the game, at least for me. Is there anything else I wanted to say about combat? That combat shit, the thing with the points. Oh, also just fights are really slow. Like, I really like the turn-based combat, like the system. But through a combination of your characters not doing a lot of damage, the stronger attacks, unless they're upgraded, which good luck because it takes fucking forever, it's gonna be a while till you can bust those out. It's slow, and not like a fun, methodical slow, just slow. So you would think with all of that I wouldn't give gameplay a great score, but I would still give it a 3 out of 5. Mostly because as much as I complained, a bunch of them like the point system sucks. Boss fights are a pain in the ass and mech combat's dog shit. The base system I do think is really good and really fun. It's like, this is why I love turn-based combat. I love being tactical. I love being strategic. I love that feeling of, how do I best maximize this turn? I want to do damage, but I want to get to my strong thing, so I should guard, but I need to heal, but how do I maximize my boost here? I love that. It's amazing. Also, I got the Erdkaiser, which is the like super summon that does 9,999 damage to everything on the screen, like to all enemies. And like Jose saw, he's like, oh, this is your Knights of the Round. So you get it right before the final dungeon, if you've gotten all the things needed for it. So the final dungeon was amazing. I was just blowing everything up. The penultimate boss is you're fighting Albedo, and the fight starts with him saying some like absolutely cracked out bullshit, and then as soon as it was Shion's turn, which was like turn 2, Erdkaiser, he's dead. And then the final boss is like 16,000 health, so it was just, okay, Chaos, you do your shit. Cosmos, go kill that, and she was obliterating it. Or the item, she had the, it's called like the King's Crown, which just gives her 1 additional AP. So like she can do she can essentially attack every turn, and then still be able to use a stronger move on the next turn. She also had the Double Buster, which allows her to use 2 tech attacks. So if you essentially upgrade one to get it out faster, and she has the AP for it, she can do another move right after. And I was able to upgrade her attacks. I think what she was doing, it was like R Dragon into an R Dragon, and it was like, it was like normal attack, R Dragon, R Dragon. So it was like a few hundred damage, because she also has like a self boost, which she did at the start of the fight. I was like, okay, next hit did like 800 damage. The next hit did like 800 damage. She's on a fucking roll. And as soon as the boss was under 9,000 health, or like, is that like 8,400, I think, I was like, okay, Erdkaiser, go burr. And that was the final boss. And I mean, it was kind of a like, with all the bullshit I've had to deal with in this game and its bosses, with how slow and monotonous base combat is, as much as I love the system, being able to just say Erdkaiser, go burr, and plowing through the final dungeon was really cathartic and satisfying. And I think because Shion had a thing that halved her MP cost for shit, I guess like her ether cost. So it was about 30 a pop for the Erdkaiser, and she had about usually somewhere in the 50s in terms of her EP, although it kept going up with like every level. So I had like 99 small ether restores, which gives me 10. So I was like, all right, Erdkaiser, boop, boop, Erdkaiser, boop, boop, boop. It was just really fun. So I give it another 3 there. moving on to the narrative. So earlier when I was talking about like the lip flaps not quite matching, I compared it to XC2. The narrative also is to me is very similar. Not necessarily in terms of the events that happen, although Cosmos is in both games. This has what I like to call Xenoblade 2 syndrome, which is your actual narrative events are pretty cool. Or it's like the narrative is easy to follow. I like the characters. The plot itself is pretty cool, but it's the lore and the backstory and the individual character histories that I don't know yet is what's really motivating me to go forward, and that's why I'm enjoying the narrative. Like in this game, what is the actual plot? The Woglinde, which is this, it's like a giant fucking airship, is attacked by Gnosis, which are like aliens, extra-dimensional aliens. That sounds about right. I'm not exactly sure what they are, but it's some kind of thing where if they touch you, you die. You turn into a pillar of salt because Xeno, there's going to be some Christian imagery throughout. There's literally a scene where Cosmos is on a cross like fucking Jesus, and I'm like, sure, dog. Gotcha. There's a scene where there's like 12 Zohars, and the name on each one is one of the disciples of Christ because, sure. There's like one thing, like, spoilery that I know about the story, and since I haven't gotten there yet, I don't even know what game it's in, I'm not gonna bring it up. But it's the kind of thing where I'm like, okay, so playing the game, I wasn't sure if, like, okay, all this Christ imagery and stuff, is this just there to be there, or does it serve a purpose? And after I learned this thing, I was like, I'm still not sure, but it seems more like it serves a purpose. I can't wait to get to this. This sounds fucking fascinating. But, essentially the plot is like the Woglinde gets attacked. Shion, one of her colleagues, Alan, and Cosmos. Oh, and also another guy, was Andrew a general or was he a colonel? I want to say he was a general? Maybe he was a colonel. But Andrew Cherenkov, who I kept pronouncing as Sharonkov personally, just because I know Clay has a character in one of his stories whose last name is Sharonkov, and that's how it's pronounced. Anyways, they are able to escape. Other people were able to escape as well, but these four ended up on like a regular ship. So the four of them are trying to go to the government in Second Miltia, I believe, to deliver Cosmos, who is this anti-Gnosis weapon. Similarly, Ziggy is a cyborg soldier who was tasked with saving Momo, who was a very specific android, because of information that she has, and also needs to bring her to the government on Second Miltia. So these two groups end up coming together. And then they meet another dude named Junior, who's got like part of like a bigger foundation, who is going to take them to Second Miltia. And that's the main plot. And then like partway through, some asshole fires up the Death Star, so you go take care of the Death Star and then you land on Second Miltia, and that's the end of the game. It's like, in terms of the actual plot, there's things that happen, not a whole lot happens, but whenever they talk about the lore and backstory, and it's like the bits you get of Junior's history and Shion's history and with her parents, or how, like, when Cosmos was first built, she was the fucking Terminator. Like, she woke up, went nuts, and then just started killing people. And then Shion, like, had to put her down after she killed Shion's, like, one of her best friends, one of her close colleagues. And how now that Cosmos is rebuilt, on the one hand, Shion's like, I feel kind of motherly toward her. I care a lot about her. But I'm also afraid of her. And it's like, I'd rather we not have to turn her on and use her. But again, part of that is like, you know, she's almost like a kid to me. So like, I don't want to use my kid for violence. Also, I know what the fuck she's capable of. She kind of scares me. I'd rather we not have to do this. It's super, super fucking interesting. I also have to give a shout out to the scene where Cosmos wakes up, where like you see like the pod opens, she's got like the red eyes, and you're seeing it. I think she had red eyes at that point. I know the red eyes could also come later. She might have had in that scene too. But you see from her perspective, and almost again like that first person Terminator look, as she's looking at all these people who are terrified of her because they know what happened last time she woke up. And there's a scene where she's just like strutting, turns around, fires a Gatling gun at some monsters, like it's the most nonchalant shit at the world in the world. There's a scene where she just is shooting a dude because there were some Gnosis behind him, and then she yells like, "Come on, what the fuck? You just killed a dude!" And like my prime directive, Shion, is your protection. If I didn't shoot at him, if I didn't shoot through him, I would have to shoot around him. That would have caused a 20% decrease in my accuracy, and that just wasn't going to cut it. So, and also, he was expendable. Again, that's not the exact dialogue. Basically, it's like no one's going to give a shit. It would have decreased my accuracy. There also wasn't enough space in the pod for you, him, and Alan, so I made the call. It's like, dude, she is cold, but she's so cool. You're like, okay, one game in, I can see why people really like Cosmos. Like, she is by far the best party. In terms of just like, utility, it's Shion, because Shion had like some really good, like, single target healing, AoE healing, and she's the only character that can use the summons, so she's the only one that can use the Erdkaiser because Erdkaiser go burr. But Cosmos consistently was just fucking shit up. Every now and then there was a fight where I'm like, oh, okay, this enemy resists what she can do, so I guess I'll use like Junior here. But for the most part for me, it was Shion, Kos, and Chaos. But back to the Xenoblade 2 comparison. Where for me, Xenoblade 2 had really interesting lore, really interesting backstories for, again, the world and the characters. Yes, I think Pyra and Mythra are like hot as fuck. But I really, genuinely love the character of the Aegis and the history and all that shit. The real difference to me between Xenosaga Episode 1 and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is Xenoblade 2 is allowed to end. And while it has a story that for the most part is alright and a great history, by the end of the game it gets to capitalize on that. And it's like, okay, here's the payoff. And getting to Elysium was amazing. Like, when I finally climbed that fucking tree and I saw what was in there, I think I gasped a little bit. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm so excited for everything that's about to happen at the end of this game. Xenosaga Episode 1 is just that. It's Episode 1. It feels like this is a good introduction to the rest of the story. And I'm definitely left wanting more. Which, that's a thing people like to say. It's like, like if you leave the audience wanting more, then, you've done your job. It means you did something good. Especially because this isn't the ending. Like, if you leave me wanting more at the end of something, then it means I'm unsatisfied at Game of Thrones. But, it does a good job of setting shit up. I think, because I don't know how it pays off. I'm looking forward to seeing where it pays off. But because I don't really know, it's hard for me to be like... it's hard for me to go like, dude, the story's amazing. It seems like it's on the right track, but we'll see how amazing it is once I finish everything. There's some of the other shit I think is my theory is because a lot of Chaos's abilities are about angelic shit, like Angel Blow, Heaven's Wrath, Angel Wings. I think he's an angel. I don't know if specifically it's like, oh yeah, this is Uriel, this is Michael or something, but I think he's an angel. And he has this strong affinity toward Kos. So I don't think that Kos is just an android. I think possibly she is also an angel. I'm not a hundo on that. I have a theory about Shion, but that's because of a spoiler that I learned that I was kind of alluding to earlier. So that's something I really don't want to get into now. Let's see. Oh, yeah, and just like the character shit, like Junior and his relationship with Albedo. I do kind of want to learn more about that. Like there's some little bits here to be like, okay, there's something interesting that happened, and we get some of it, but not all of it. Shion's history on Second Miltia and like the relationship with her parents, her fear of thunderstorms. Like when they were getting into that, I was like, this is really interesting. Also, you poor woman. Like I feel so bad for you. Ziggy's backstory is super interesting to me. He is a dude like he is a cyborg soldier who only takes super hard missions specifically because like he's like, I'm going to do everything I can to succeed, but I want to die. Whatever happened to him in his past, all I know is he had a son. Can only assume it didn't end well for his son. He's like, I did not want to come back as a cyborg, but here I am. So if I succeed in this mission, I want you to wipe me away. I want you to erase my mind, my soul, so that like you can still use my body, but I get to die. Well, that's fucking sad. You poor man. When you get Andrew's backstory, Mr. Cherenkov, it was awesome. That is probably, narratively speaking, my favorite part of the game. Just like, I mean, like, it's a full spoiler thing, so I can go into it, but it's, I don't even know if I really want to. I really feel like this is a game, like, I would recommend that someone play it for themselves. And again, it's like, I don't really want to talk about the story because it's not finished, although Andrew does go through, like, a complete story arc. It's really interesting because a lot of it is about reconstructing a person's personality. And it's like, hey, this person's maybe not all there. Let's try again. They're still not all there. Let's try again. It's really fucked up, but I kind of fucking like, not even kind of like, I loved it. I thought it was super engaging. Okay, the only other thing to talk about is basically the one part of the game narratively that I fucking hated. If Andrew was the highlight, Momo getting kidnapped is the low light. There's a part where after shit happens in the Kukai Foundation, gets attacked by Gnosis, you save a bunch of people. Momo says to everyone, she's like, hey, you guys go and take the transport ship. I'm going to stay behind for a little bit because, you know, I'm a healer. I'm going to take care of some of the wounded. Now, you would think that Shion and Chaos, being responsible adults, would think Momo is a young child, given that she is a 100th series observational reality, and which is like a very specific kind of android, and that the reason there was this massive blockade and we were all put under arrest, because that's the thing that happens, like under trumped up charges, is so the government and shit could get their hands on Momo. You would think the two of them would go, we shouldn't leave Momo alone. You would think Junior, given the fact that the game seems to hint that like he's got a bit of an affinity for her, he's got a bit of a crush on her, would go, I'd want to make sure that she's okay. I like her, and all that shit about she's 100th series reality and it's super fucking important. I should keep an eye on her. You would think that Ziggy, the motherfucker with an ability called Bodyguard that is specifically related to Momo, would say, my job is keeping her safe. And given the shit that's going on, and a lot of it seems because they want her, I should stay by her side and make sure she's safe. I didn't say anything about Cosmos because Cosmos probably wouldn't fucking care. But you would think someone in these 5 individuals... 4. Cosmos the 5th, my mistake. Someone in these 4 individuals would go, someone should stay with Momo. And none of them do. And what do you know? The young kid with the offensive stats of a fucking Kakuna, who is a really important figure in this world's mythos and lore, and they know that. They know there's people after her. Surprise, surprise, she gets fucking kidnapped. It actively bothered me because it feels like the entire back end of the game only happens because they made a dumb decision. And not like an interesting dumb decision where it's like, okay, there's pros and cons to this and pros and cons to this, or someone made a not good decision, but given their mental state or the stress going on, like you can understand why someone did that. Like I was reading Mistborn: The Well of Ascension. I've talked about that, and like the thing that happens at the end of that book, and we're not talking about Mistborn, so I'm not going into specific spoilers. Character did not make a good decision, but given everything going on in that and the circumstances, it's very understandable why they did it. So I, as the reader, don't go, "This is fucking dumb." I go, "That sucks, but it makes sense." Here it's, this is fucking dumb and literally only happened so the plot could go forward, because none of these four people would actually do that. It bothers me. But the rest of the narrative, even though there's no real payoff, it is interesting. They, like I said, when they talk about the lore and the history, it's really interesting. As much as I joked about how I was watching Xenosaga, just as much as I was playing it, or even more so, I really liked watching Xenosaga. Now, I will say narrative, I'm going to give it the same score. It's a 3 out of 5 because of that lack of payoff. But I feel like as the series goes, it might be something I revisit. It's like, now that I see what you're setting up, holy shit, this did a phenomenal job of doing that. There's so much foreshadowing, and it's just like expertly done. It gets a better score. If I'm like, you set it up well, but it sucks, but you did your job for the setup, this is fine. Or if I'm like, you didn't set this shit up at all, I might make the score go down. We'll see. But I would say 333, that's a 9 out of 15. And on the one hand, I'm like, it almost feels a little low, because I did like the game and I liked the experience. But at the same time, it also feels kind of right. In all three areas, it gets, to me, like I would say like a 2.5 is an average score. So a 3 out of 5 to me, that feels above average. Like you got an above average score. You were consistent across the board. No particular area was like, this is great. But they're all pretty good because everything lacked something. To me, the narrative lacked a payoff. The presentation, a lot of it just lacked music. Like a lot of the gameplay elements really did. And gameplay lacked good boss fights and fun mechs. And it was like really annoying at parts. But overall, I did enjoy my experience. I'm very glad I finally played it. And I'm looking forward to starting 2. I was like, I'm gonna play it. And then I got the Persona bug watching my friends play, so I'm like, I'm gonna play Strikers. And after finishing that first arc in like 7 hours, I'm like, I don't really want to play Strikers anymore. It's not doing it for me. So on the one hand, I'm like, I need to start Xenosaga 2. On the other hand, it's only going to be a few days till Pokemon comes out. I might start something shorter, like a couple shorter projects, before I boot up Xenosaga 2. We'll see. But sometime in September, I'm going to start it and hopefully finish it.